Jacob Frenkel. He is the chairman of J.P. Morgan Chase International and the former governor of the Bank of Israel. Jacob, good to see you.
Good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Here we are looking at a market that is based on the fundamental backdrop of the economy. Reports today that we may very well see a negative GDP for the economy in the first quarter. How would you characterize things right now?
Well, I think that the first quarter in the U.S. is indeed very poor, but so have been the previous first quarters of previous years. If you look at it in the medium term, it looks that the U.S. this year will actually grow in a much better performance, 2.5% or so, and probably the same also next year. So I think that looking at the world as a whole, the U.S. is actually the bright point.
Yeah, the brightest, certainly, when you look at the global story at a time that you've got negative interest rates around the world right now, negative nominal interest rates. What's your sense of the Federal Reserve unwinding the stimulus and beginning to raise rates later this year? Is that what you're expecting?
Well, first I expect it, but if we put it in perspective, when we met 6 years ago and we spoke about the dramatic fall in interest rates, we said, well, this must be a detour. It cannot be a new paradigm. And then year in and year out, interest rates all over the world got close to zero. Real interest rates became negative. And we know it is not sustainable. And yet it is there. It was necessary at the time, but it is now creating distortions. It can stimulate excessively financial markets, may create some bubbles. So the sooner we get back to normalization, namely positive interest rates, the better.
But can we see the Fed raise rates in an economy that actually is like 2 steps forward, 1 step back? Look at the GDP today. I mean, we may get good numbers on the employment report on Friday, but you're still talking about a negative backdrop for the GDP for the first quarter and an overall environment where people are just not feeling like it's this recovery is impacting them.
Well, monetary policy impacts the economy of the future rather than response to the economy of the past. If we believe that the U.S. is on the right path, that 2015 as a whole will show close to 2.5%, the 2016 will be the same and maybe better. If we see that Europe is recovering it for the first time, it has a forecast of about 1.5% growth, then the Fed should be able to do it, because if not now, then when?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't, frankly, everyone focuses, is it June, is it September, who could care less?
Right, it just needs to happen.
In the perspective of history, it doesn't matter 3 months sooner or later. What is important is that the first step should go. This is now a source of noise, not a source of stability.
Well, and I know you recently spoke with Mario Draghi. Is he doing the right moves in terms of Europe and getting that economy going?
Well, Mario Draghi is doing exactly the right move, but he is only the background music, and unfortunately is in the center stage. The important task for Europe is the structural policies. It is the role of governments, but the European Central Bank is providing them some breathing space, but unfortunately, this breathing space is not fully utilized to do the right thing. It will be terrible if at the end of the day monetary policy is the main fiddle in this orchestra.
Right. They need labor reform. They need structural reform.
They need to grow.
Yeah.
Monetary policy does not produce growth.
Let me switch gears. You're just back from Israel. I know that, and we were talking earlier about this op-ed from Henry Kissinger and George Shultz about Iran. The negotiations going on with Iran right now, probably the most important negotiation we've ever seen in terms of the world. Would you agree with that statement?
I absolutely agree.
And what's your take on it?
Well, what my take is, I read, first of all, Kissinger and Schultz's article in a very serious way. And, you know, there are two prominent former Secretary of States, a hero in the history of the United States, leaders in reading the world political system.
And they don't think it's a good deal.
Well, they tell us, be careful. The issue is verification. The issue is enforceability. The issue is we are starting with a world of no trust, in a world in which deception has been the rules of the game. So make sure that you have not only enforceability but also clarity. Look at even about the interim statement. The interpretation of the US is different than the interpretation of Iran and the EU. So what are we talking about? The only thing that they call for is be modest. Don't assume that you solve the problem by talking alone. You really need to have clarity and no question marks open. I think that they raise critical issues that will need to be addressed. And by the way, you mentioned Israel. Of course, Israel is going to be influenced dramatically by it, but the issue is not nuclear Iran versus Israel. It's nuclear Iran vis-a-vis the rest of the world, and that's why it is such a global matter.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Jacob, great to have your insights on this. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We will see you soon. Dr. Jacob Frenkel, J.P. Morgan International Chairman. Coming up, we're